it was to get this deal to make things work peacefully. Can you elaborate on that?
Can you repeat that, please?
So the actual goal with respect to Freedom Corp as well as the protesters that you were representing, their actual goal was not to achieve a meeting with the mayor, but it was to deal with this in a peaceful manner. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, well, that was obviously our goal, and
If
again,
you're all
to
here
get
for
the
the
trucks
first
off the
time,
residential
hello.
streets.
My
We were
name's
hoping to
Pike,
find a
and we're
way
going
that
to
the trucks that did have to
check
move
this out.
their vehicles
I'll
out of
try
the
and keep
city
it down so you can
would
hear everything.
be
If
able
you have
to
any
come back
problems,
in and
please
continue
send a
the
message.
protest. And again, we felt it was a step in the right direction, and meeting with the mayor was not one of my goals, but I thought, again, it was a way to open some dialogue with somebody in a position of authority.
Okay. And just on my last point here, part of this commission is about coming up with recommendations and things like that. I take it when you came into Ottawa, and we've heard evidence that a lot of the truckers were directed where to park, and that's where they kind of stayed throughout the proceeding or throughout the protest.
Mhm.
And so there is this issue in what I refer to and what's referred to in some of the jurisprudence is a speaker's corner. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think so.
Okay, it's a place, a location in a government area, particularly out front of Parliament or where have you, where protesters are permitted to go, and it's a designated area for protest.
Okay.
I take it when you were trying to get the protest moving, most of the protesters were wanting to get onto Wellington because it's in front of Parliament and they were protesting the federal government. Fair?
Correct.
All right. And what is your understanding of the current state of Wellington today?
I believe it's blocked off.
Right. And if that area that's blocked off became a speaker's corner where individuals at any time could go and protest the federal government, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that would be a good idea. I think Canadians have a right to exercise their democratic rights, and they have a right to have their voices heard.
Right. And my friends from the government of Canada put to you a whole bunch of evidence that you weren't familiar with until you got here with respect to threats. Can you elaborate on any of the threats you've received, ones that you know members of the protesters received, as well as the legal counsel, and even any of the legal counsel in this room since this proceeding started?
I know, well, I heard when I was at the ARC that the ARC was receiving death threats against me, which is one of the reasons why I left that location. I have messages on my phone from an Instagram account from a young man that wanted to not just shoot me, but also shoot the rest of the protesters or the convoy organizers. I know that my criminal lawyer has received some very nasty emails. I believe Mr. Wilson has received death threats and threatening emails.
Right. And so it's fair to say then that there has been a lot of threats on both sides.
That's fair.
Okay. But do you know anybody who's made death threats to any of these individuals?
Of course not.
And when you walk in here every day for the past few days, there's a protester outside, and I'm sure you've heard everything she's been saying, and she's a counter protester and is against your cause. What are the sort of things that that protester has said to you?
To hear it because there's a lot of construction. I just hear her shouting my name a lot. I heard her say something, I think just now, about she can't wait till I go back to jail. But other than that, I haven't really.
Did she mention anything about terrorism?
I believe that's right on her sign.
And what's it say?
It says, "Go home, terrorists."
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any re-examination?
No, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, I just have one question. You were taken to a chart and told there were charges for violent offenses.
Yes.
Do you know who was charged? Do you know the
With
four
violent
people?
offenses?
Yeah,
I
the four
no,
people.
I know I don't. Not that I can recall anyways.
So you don't know if it's someone you know or someone you don't know?
I do not, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you for your testimony,
Thank you, sir.
and you're now free to go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that we move on to the next, which is the, I believe, the panel of two witnesses, and there's an issue to be discussed about as I understand it, the relevance of that.
Correct.
So maybe we'll deal with that now, if that's agreeable.
Sure, thank you very
Okay.
much. So I'll remain seated here, Commissioner.
That's fine. Just identify yourself because it's the same. The reporters have to know who's speaking.
Sure, it's David Mijkowski, counsel for the Ottawa Police Service. We have a very real concern with respect to the witness panel of Chris Deering and Maggie Dingmer. I believe there is now a different name, and I apologize. It's Hope Braun, I believe. Those two individuals, and our concern is essentially one of procedural fairness. Those two individuals were not on the list of witnesses provided by the commission. And so last Friday.
You mean they weren't on the original list?
Correct. And what we found out was on last Friday, October 28th at 12:37 p.m., we received an email from the commission saying that these two individuals would be called as witnesses and attaching two statements from these individuals. No information had been previously provided about these individuals or about the issues that they were going to testify about, which are the how their arrest was handled, nor were there any documents provided by the parties, including the Ottawa Police Service, about the manner of arrest. It appears that both of these individuals, from their statements, are going to give evidence about the circumstances of their arrest by unknown officers. I've been able to determine in one case that it was not an OPS officer, one of them, but we are trying to find out information. These are arrests that took place on February 18th after the invocation of the Emergencies Act. These individuals were not arrested pursuant to the Emergencies Act. They were arrested based on common law powers and the criminal code. And my concerns really are twofold. Firstly, the information we say is not relevant to your mandate under the Act. And the second question is one of procedural fairness. There were over 275 arrests made by the police in that period of February 18th to the 20th. None of the police witnesses were.
Okay, I'm back.
Specifically,
Let's see how this is going.
arrests, no
I do
documents
not like
were
this guy. I do not know
requested.
why. I just do not like
The
him.
last police witness who testified in this proceeding was on Wednesday, October 26th. Had those witness
He annoys
statements
me so
been
much, I think I need to
provided
go in the other
prior
room.
to the completion of the police witnesses, then at the very least, we could have asked our witnesses to provide evidence with respect to the arrest plan, with respect to the circumstances of the arrest of those two individuals and the other 275 people who were arrested. I am not faulting Commission Counsel. I understand that the statements were provided to them and they provided them to us immediately after. But it was 2 days after the last witness testified. Those statements were in the those were witnesses who are here represented by counsel. They had an obligation to produce documents. They chose deliberately or otherwise to not present that evidence and not allow me then to respond to it. And it's obvious that some of that information they had beforehand. And in fact, to add to the procedural unfairness, last night we received an email from counsel for the convoy organizers attaching 7 more videos that also would have existed that were not disclosed. There's no explanation for why the convoy organizers have not had to follow the same rules as everyone else. Those statements, even if they were relevant, and I don't concede that they are, should have been provided prior to police witnesses testifying. It creates a serious and irreparable breach of procedural fairness to have you left with 2 arrests out of 275, which I am unable to provide evidence in response to, both those specific arrests as well as the arrest plan in general. And there are, I say, 2 possible solutions. The first is to not allow that evidence to be heard. It's not relevant to your mandate. And even if it was, it would be very difficult to draw any conclusion from the evidence of 2 individuals out of 275 arrests when you've heard no evidence about any of the arrests of anyone else or the arrest plans or any explanation of those 2 particular arrests. Alternatively, if you are inclined to allow that panel to testify, including adding new documents that were not on the database and were provided last night, then the OPS must, we say, as a matter of procedural fairness, be allowed the opportunity to call another witness to provide evidence about the arrest plans and the exercise of use of force options in connection with the exercise of police powers, generally and specifically with respect to the scene that the officers encountered on February 18th. You have not heard about what is involved when a public order unit has to exercise tactical options. The commission didn't lead this evidence, nor did we. Similarly, we didn't provide any documents surrounding those arrests. So while my first submission is that you should not allow this evidence, as an alternative, if you are inclined to do so, then I would ask for the opportunity to call evidence so that in fairness, the police witnesses can address what should have been put to them by the convoy organizers and which for some reason was not. Those are my only submissions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other council wish to make submissions?
In response, sir.
Okay, I'm just canvassing first. So you'd like, yes?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay. Go ahead.
Should I go ahead? Emily Tamman for
I
the,
take it you're supporting the proposal that, or the objection?
that's right. Yes, we agree. Just on behalf of the Ottawa Coalition of Residents and Businesses, we share the view conveyed by the Ottawa Police. We understand that the commission is working under difficult constraints and there have been limitations in council's ability to get documents and other evidence to the parties in a timely manner. But in this case, we would agree that there is prejudice and that the evidence, at least as it pertains to the arrests, should not be admitted.
Thank you. Any other?
Yes, Commissioners. Commissioners, Chris Diana for the OPP. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, the OPP agrees with the position of our friend, Mr. Michikowski, both the main position or the alternative position. At this point, we don't know if the OPP was involved or not in these incidents. And based on procedural fairness, we should that evidence either should not be permitted or we should have a chance to respond to it. I won't add anything further to the comments by my friend, but the OPP supports that position.
Okay. Any other submissions in support? Okay, and then as I understand it, the convoy organizers are opposing?
We're of course in support of the witnesses testifying and all of the evidence being put before the commission. I'll deal first with the point of law my friend raises about relevance and materiality. With respect to the terms of reference under the order in council in this commission, this commission is to look at the efforts of police and other responders prior to and after the declaration. So with respect to whether or not there was police brutality or misconduct, et cetera, it's relevant material within the terms of reference. Second, with respect to my friend's allegations of prejudice and it not being fair, with respect, they have not called a single victim or a single eyewitness to any of these purported violent crimes that they're trying to lay at the hands of the protesters as a collective. I don't see how our clients being able to find some witnesses of which they had no control of and which approached them in trying to be able to call actual evidence of actual violence that isn't just an assertion. And in my respectful view, it's relevant and material. If you find that there is some form of prejudice suffered, what my friend is essentially alleging is a violation of the rule of Brown and Dunn. If this was a court, that leaves the court with various remedies, and one is to permit the recalling of a witness in rebuttal. With respect to the rule of Brown and Dunn, I did put issues with respect to arrest, et cetera, directly to Chief Bell, who was in charge of the operation at the time and acting and asking questions about what was actually done. We've now provided the videos of those actual arrests. And I understand that all the police agencies don't want that to be in the public eye. And with respect, I would submit that the public has a right to see these videos. It is in the public interest, and any prejudice is easily repairable by permitting my friends to call a rebuttal witness if they so choose. Subject to any questions, sir, those are my submissions.
Okay, and any other party is opposing the application?
Hatem
Okay.
Pyr for the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
Yes.
We support the Freedom Convoy organizers' position, and if I could just make a few points. So first, the terms of reference in the Emergencies
I do not
Act
like this guy.
require investigating and looking into
I
the
don't know why.
appropriateness of the measures that were used. Interim Chief Bell testified that using emergency powers were used to create an exclusion zone, and then they relied on that authority. And so I would expect that these witnesses as arrestees would have evidence that would be relevant to the implementation of that authority. Also, to the extent that my friend made the point that these are but two arrestees of many, we did hear from two Ottawa residents who provided their experiences as examples, and that would then represent a broader class of individuals. So this would also be two arrestees providing their experiences, which would then be emblematic of others in a similar position. And I would just like to add on, my friend, Mr. Honor from the Democracy Fund provided submissions through email. He's not here. I would just briefly read it in just to provide his perspective as well. The Democracy Fund submitted that the evidence of these witnesses is relevant to the Commission's mandate. Specifically, the Commissioner has been directed to examine issues to the extent relevant relating to the efforts of police and other responders prior to and after the declaration. Superintendent Robert Bernier and others testified about the mission statement contained in the OPS operational plan of February 13th, which speaks to enforcing legislation with the, quote, utmost respect to the individual's charter of rights, end quote. There was evidence before the Commission that this plan evolved after the declaration of the Emergencies Act, and there was also evidence that the OPS found the powers available to them under the Emergencies Act to be useful. The Commission should hear evidence from these witnesses as it will speak to how police enforcement was carried out during the state of emergency from a protester perspective. If there are objections as to relevance as the evidence unfolds, those objections can be dealt with orally. If other witnesses need to be recalled, that decision can be made after the hearing of evidence from the witnesses in question. So that was Mr. Honor's submission, which the Justice Center also supports. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner,
with this- Any other who are opposing or rather supporting the motion? Okay, yes, Commissioner
Mr.
Reynolds?
Commissioner, at some point, Commission Council would like to provide some points of context, but if you're still canvassing, we can wait until that's done.
Okay, you'd like to add something? Yes?
If I may, Commissioner Emily Tamman again for the record. I just wanted to respond to one point made by my friends regarding the absence of evidence with respect to residents of Ottawa who experienced violence in the convoy. And for the record, would just like to note again that the Ottawa Coalition was very limited in the time that was allocated to tell the story of residents of Ottawa. I would also note that there are many residents who continue to fear for their safety in being identified publicly as opposing the convoy. And with that said, I don't think it's appropriate to infer from the lack of evidence on that point that it didn't happen. And I would also note in response
I
to
think you're getting into argument now.
Well,
We're dealing with whether or not there's relevance to the evidence that's being tendered.
That's right, but one of the bases upon which it's being asserted that it is relevant is that there's been no evidence in relation to violence experienced by residents. And that's something that my friend put to Ms. Leach this morning, and also Mr. Miller noted it in his submission to you just now.
Okay, yes, Mr. Michikowski.
David Michikowski from the Ottawa Police. The one point I want to respond to that has not, with respect, been addressed by my friends, and which is highly problematic, I suggest, is the convoy lawyer has indicated that he put an issue with respect to an arrest to Chief Bell. And that is correct. However, he provided no information, no details, no indication of who it was, when it was. It came out of the air. And what makes that more problematic is that obviously that information was in his possession and there was no documentation provided beforehand. This was sprung after the police witnesses had already testified when we then got these statements. Had the rules been followed, that witness would have seen those statements, would have seen documents. We would have had the opportunity to put in documents and call evidence or ask to call evidence in response. The final point I note is that one of my friends indicated that several of the convoy several of the coalition's witnesses testified. And that is true. The difference is the rules were followed and everybody knew before they testified what they were going to say. So the convoy organizers had procedural fairness, as did everybody else. In this case, there is a serious denial of procedural fairness, and that's what we say must be addressed. Thank you.
Okay. And Commission Counsel, you wanted to provide some context, and among other things, I don't know what the witnesses are going to say. So to what degree is this one of the witnesses that we saw the video about, or is this something different?
So
Maybe go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off my friend. This is not the witness. That one was also unfair, but we were at least able to get instructions and able to deal with it in cross-examination.
Okay, so
That
that was
is
a
not
red
that-
herring then. Okay.
Yeah, I have no
I
objection.
was worried that this was the same person.
No, I have no objection, by the way, for you reviewing those statements so that you can understand the nature of the evidence.
Okay. Commission Counsel.
thank you, Mr. Commissioner. John Mather, Commission Counsel. Just 2 points of context. Again, we haven't heard the evidence yet, but Commission Counsel expect that while there may be some evidence given about the arrests, that's not the focus of the evidence. Don't expect it to be the focus of the evidence. The two individuals who are being called, Commission Council understands, participated in the protests both before and after the invocation of the Emergencies Act. They are not individuals, again, as we anticipate, who identify themselves as organizers. To date, the Commission has called individuals who have identified themselves as organizers, and this is a different perspective and one that we anticipate exploring. And then the second point, Mr. Commissioner, is that there has been evidence given by police witnesses about the measured responses in terms of ending the protests in the red zone in Ottawa. Some of these matters have been before the Commission and prior to today without objection.
Okay. Thank you. Any further submissions by anyone? I'm being very generous about submission time,
Just one more, sir, and I just want to emphasize,
but don't repeat though.
I'm not going to repeat.
I always worry when someone says, I'm going to emphasize.
I'll take it back. I'm going to point out that, when it's with the commission under the Inquiry Act and its provincial equivalents, it is an inquiry and it has different rules, and it's much more liberal when it comes to the permitting of evidence. And though I understand my friend's argument, there is many more remedies available for a breach of the rule of Brown and Dunn if you find that it had occurred than not permitting the evidence. And I would submit simply that the least intrusive remedy in the truth-seeking function of this commission would be to allow the evidence and on whatever terms you see just. Thank you.
Would you just give me a moment? Okay, I'm going to allow the panels to go ahead. On Mr. Michkowski's first point about whether the information is relevant, I think there is certainly evidence that it may be, I haven't heard it, but it may be relevant as to the use of the Emergency Act, and in particular the notices that have apparently there's lots of evidence were circulated as recently as this morning. So the use of the notices, the setting up of exclusion zones is squarely within the mandate. And therefore, I think the information may well be relevant. I also note that there has been evidence of police as to the fact that the protest was ended in an orderly manner and quite properly. I believe Inspector Bowden talked about that. I believe another witness, maybe Chief Bell, talked about the fact it was ended without burning of police cars, et cetera. So the manner of ending is relevant, and this may go to some degree. I think there was also cross-examination or in I believe of Inspector Bernier as to the arrangements that were made and the processing, how the processing was done. So there is evidence about how the operation, if you like, was carried out, including how the detainees were treated and the system arranged. Now, having said that, the impact and relevance diminishes to a point where it in fact becomes questionable as we get further from the use of the Emergency Act notice, et cetera, because this commission is not mandated to deal with arrests that were or were not done in accordance with the appropriate police procedures and so on. That's a matter for civil or criminal courts if there have been issues in that regard. So I think it moves quite, well, I would say, of marginal relevance, if any, to what the commission is doing when you talk about the actual manner of arrest as opposed to what I've described that is more squarely in the relevance. So having said that, I'm not prepared to accept that this panel is not relevant. I expect the accent will be on what I have set out is clearly relevant and what's related to that. And obviously there'll be some context. Context has been provided by other witnesses sometimes. And while I may hear that, it may not become an issue that I have to deal with. Now, on the second point, the procedural fairness point, I have some concern about that because obviously it is, as I've said many times, and I'm going to repeat it, the public wants to get to the bottom of this. And that means fair to all parties. And I am concerned that there may be unfairness to to some of the parties, in particular the police forces, whether it be the OPP or the OPS, or in fact to former Chief Slowly or anyone else. So fairness is front and center in my concerns. And if after we hear this evidence, there's a need to call further evidence, we've said we would sit evenings and we will sit Saturdays. We will get the information that the public needs to know and that will lead to a fair treatment for all. But I guess that's my ruling. Now, if you want something more formal in writing, I'm happy to do it. But since the panel is here waiting and we all want to make sure we fully use our Friday, I thought I'd give my ruling. Now, if any party wants it in writing and expanded upon, I'm happy to do that. But I think that sets out really my thinking in a general way. And with respect to whether we will have another panel or another witness, I think that's something we can deal with after the evidence is heard. With respect to the videos, I'm a bit concerned about the videos. I haven't seen them. And I would hope we're not going to get too far afield of what's relevant to the issues I need to deal with. And I don't mean to minimize any issues about how an arrest was carried out. Those are obviously significant to individuals involved, including the officers, but that's not central. In fact, is more anecdotal, I think, in terms of what this commission is dealing with. But it is part of the record so far, some of the evidence relating to that. So that's my ruling. And we can proceed with the panel, I believe, and I will expect the parties, if there are concerns about the ruling and you wish it in writing, please notify Commission Council. Well, it will be in writing because it'll be in the transcript, but expanded upon, I mean.
Sir, I don't believe the witness chair and desk are set up for 2 witnesses right now. They need to get another mic as well as another
Okay,
chair.
well, we'll take 5 minutes then to set up the panel.
The commission is in recess for 5 minutes. La commission est levée pour 5 minutes. L'autre? Order à l'autre? The commission is reconvened. La commission reprend.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Deering and Ms. Hope Braun. My name is Stephen Armstrong, and I am Commission Counsel. Thank you for coming today. I have 45 minutes to ask you some questions, and because you're a panel, I'm going to ask questions mostly one at a time, but when I have questions for you as a group. Sorry? Oh, sorry, you have to be sworn. Forgot that. I got too eager.
Mr. Deering,
Yes,
will you swear on a religious document or do you wish to affirm?
I wish to affirm.
For the record, please state your full name and spell it out.
Christopher Gregory Deering, ChristopherGregoryDeering.
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence to be given by you to this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ma'am, will you swear on a religious document or do you wish to affirm?
The Bible, please. Do I stand?
For the record, please state your full name and spell it out.
Margaret Hope Braun, MARGARETHOPEBRAUN.
Do you swear that the evidence to be given by you to this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
So help me God.
Thank you.
So good morning again. As I was just explaining, because it's a panel, I'm going to ask questions mostly one at a time. But when I have a question for you as a group, I'll try to make that clear, okay? Six. So I just want to ask some questions about your background really quickly. So Mr. Deering, I understand that you're a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces
Yes, sir.
and you served a tour of duty in Afghanistan.
Yes, sir.
And I understand that you were wounded on that tour.
It was.
Can you briefly tell the commissioner about that event?
Sure. I joined the military quickly in 2007. Finished my training very quick. I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2008. So in less than approximately 2 years, I was in Afghanistan. 4 months into my tour, my vehicle was hit by a IED, which took my vehicle. Sorry, it blew my vehicle about 100 feet in the air, killing 3 occupants immediately and leaving me seriously wounded. I came back to Canada and, sorry, lost my train of thought, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. I also saw, sir, and we'll take a moment. I saw that you're wearing medals.
Yes, sir.
Can you just explain what the medals are?
So left to right, left would be my Green Jubilee medal. It was lost during the protest with the scuffle with the police. Second is my campaign star for my tour to Afghanistan, and my sacrifice medal that I earned for being seriously wounded in combat.
And I understand now that you're retired from the Canadian Armed Forces
Yes, sir.
and you reside in Hanwell, New Brunswick.
I do.
Thank you. And Ms. Hope Braun, I understand that you're from Peterborough, Ontario,
Yes.
and you studied environmental studies at Sanford Fleming College.
Sir Sanford Fleming.
Sir
Yes.
Sanford. And you're a mother to 2 children.
Yes.
Thank you. So if I can ask Mr. Deering, I understand that you traveled to Ottawa to protest with the convoy. What made you want to come to Ottawa and protest?
It really wasn't that I wanted to come to Ottawa, it's that I felt it was my duty and that I had no choice to be there. Seeing what was happening over the last few years was troubling. And I felt that I was there 2 weekends, first between February 11th and 13th, in which a bunch of veterans took down the fence that was wrongly placed around the memorial. And then I went home, and then within days, the Emergency Act was looked at being enacted, and I rushed back to Ottawa to do what I could to protect the peaceful citizens of the protest.
And so when you traveled to Ottawa, what did you understand that you were there to protest?
The mandates. I was there to protest the mandates.
And why was that important to you?
Because for the last 2 years, personally, as a wounded veteran, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't take my family to a restaurant. I couldn't take my kids to gymnastics. I couldn't grieve my comrades in Nova Scotia because I wasn't allowed to cross the border in my own vehicle by myself to a cemetery where no one was living and lay my flowers for my mental health. And I was denied that for 2 years. There's many more reasons. Again, my train of thought is lost. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll ask some questions now to Ms. Hope Braun. I also understand that you traveled to Ottawa to protest. What made you want to come to Ottawa to protest?
Yeah, it had been going on 2 years of mandates, and they just seemed to get more and more restrictive. I had tried every avenue available within our system to communicate the difficulty that I was seeing around me and experiencing to our government at various levels, and nothing was effective, and the tone was not changing coming from the federal government. And I was just losing hope and really looking for options on how I could find more a more peace and safety for my family, and felt really isolated. And then seeing the convoy begin. I also lived out west for 10 years, so I have a lot of my support network is there, and I couldn't travel there. And so there was a lot of people who I know personally that were sharing stories about how it was affecting them where they were. And I just felt, since I'm 3 hours away from Ottawa, I have a duty to go as well, and not just represent myself, but many Canadians who could not come and felt passionately about this.
And so when did you come to Ottawa?
I came the second Saturday. I came the third weekend for the entire weekend, and I came back that Wednesday and stayed until the end. So.
And can you tell the commissioner what your experience was with those protests?
Oh, well, when we first arrived, I came with a girlfriend for the Saturday, and there was just a lot of energy. I was seeing people from all different backgrounds and cultures, different outfits and cultural outfits that I had never even seen before in Canada. There was lots of hugs, and there was walking up. There was just grown men crying and giving hugs and everywhere, and it was emotional, and we cried. We had spent a long time feeling like we were really alone. and not being able to go out and really not being able to even talk or share our experience in our family gatherings because we were not welcome to speak openly about what we were experiencing. And so it felt like this was our family. And I saw so many good things. I could just go on for an hour on that. I saw lots of flags. I saw, yeah, I think that's good for now.
And if I could ask Mr. Deering, building on that, what was your experience with the protest and how did it compare? How was it similar to or different from Ms. Hope Braun's?
My experience was that when we got to Ottawa, so on the way to Ottawa, so actually when the convoy was making their way to Ottawa, we attended a few. There were a lot of people would stay on the bridges to show support, and so where we lived close to a military base, and there must have been 4,000 to 5,000 people on this bridge waving flags, and it was amazing. And it was just the amount of support was incredible. We made our way February 11th, the first weekend, just to we wanted to see for ourselves what was going on, because when we watched the news, there was one narrative, and we wanted to see for ourselves, because on Facebook and social media, you'd see a whole completely different other story. So we wanted to go there for ourselves. So first instance was myself and my wife. We went up to see what was going on. I participated in the fence removal. Again, I went home. The following, it was the February 17th. I left my residence at 5 a.m. To go to the protest. But during the protest, there was hugs, there was homeless people being showered with food. I had read that crime was down. It was the most amazing experience I've had in my life. And I don't regret going or being there one bit. And I'm sorry, if you could refresh my memory on the question again. Sorry.
Just asking for your experience. And so, sorry, did you have anything more to add, or were you done?
There's a lot more I could pack into that, but it was the true Canadian spirit that was there.
Yeah, can I add?
Please do. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, the first weekend that I came with my a female friend, and she stayed at my house the night before, and we were reading the news, the global news, and they had something in there about we haven't received a police report yet on how many additional rapes had taken place in the city since the convoy arrived. And that just really shook me that they would go to that extent to make anyway, that way. But when I got here, the experience was like the positive masculine experience, the way that the men were behaving, they were complete gentlemen. And, I felt not unsafe whatsoever in the city. And when my phone died and I went back, I wasn't familiar with the streets. I was approached and walked to my car and just treated with such respect by the men that were here.
And so for the panel, I understand that you were coming to Ottawa and then going home and coming back. Once the Emergencies Act was invoked, why did you want to either come to Ottawa or remain in Ottawa?
So I remember when they were voting on that, and my wife and I were lying in bed, and we were terrified how the vote was going, because we knew, or we felt, that the evidence would not be able to substantiate such a call. I felt there was a great need for me to be there, not just as a veteran, but as a seriously wounded veteran, to be there to protect the Canadian people from what could potentially happen.
Ms. Hope Braun?
Could you repeat the question?
So after the Emergencies Act was invoked, why did you want to come back to Ottawa or remain in Ottawa if you were already there?
Yeah, I came to Ottawa for Valentine's Day. So that was the day that it was invoked, February 14th. if I'm correct. That day, I witnessed hundreds of roses being offered to the police officers. There was a lot of love. There was a lot of trying to heal the divide that was being created between us and the police. And the streets of Ottawa were covered in roses that day. And further to that, just listening to the senators give their speeches, I felt that that as they were supposed to approve it, but then it was removed before they had a chance to approve it or not. It sounded like there was good reason to stick to what I felt was right and stay. And I don't believe that if a government passes a law, it means that we have to go against what we believe is right. We should still, we still have a right to peacefully protest and assemble. And if we can't do that in front of the Parliament in Ottawa, I don't know,
And so building on that, Ms. Hope Braun, once the Emergencies Act was invoked, what was your understanding of your ability to lawfully protest in the downtown area?
Well, I believe that we still have a right to protest in the downtown area or anywhere. That we were peaceful, and as long as we remained so, we had a right to assemble. And yeah, I had another point to that, but you could repeat the question again.
Well, that's okay. We can come back to it. I'll just
Okay.
ask Mr. Deering, what was your understanding once the Emergencies Act was invoked of your ability to lawfully protest in the downtown area?
My understanding is that it was a mandate. In my eyes, it was an unlawful mandate. I'm a free citizen of this country. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a veteran. I'm a good person. And I felt I had the right to be there with my Canadian citizens to try to protect them.
And so, Mr. Deering, I understand that on February 18th, 2022, you were in Ottawa protesting as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And where were you staying in Ottawa that day, at that time?
So I drove up February 17th. I left my house at 5 a.m. because it takes me approximately the drive is 10 hours. With my back and my foot, my conditions, I have to stop every few hours. So I arrived in Ottawa sometime that evening. I parked my car, I remember, on Bank Street. I walked up to the memorial to just congregate with the veterans. I went back to my car, and knowing me, I got lost for an hour and a half. I walked around the city. I eventually found my car, which is where I slept. We had came up the previous weekend, which was about $1,000 for the hotel and food, and I didn't really have the means to pay for more hotel and lodging. So I slept in my car the previous night.
Do you recall where on Bank Street you parked?
No, I don't.
Was it in the downtown area?
I believe so.
And so when you drove in, did you pass any police checkpoints or anything like that?
I forget.
Okay, and Ms. Hope Braun, I understand that you were in Ottawa protesting on February 19th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Where were you staying at the time, or how did you find yourself in Ottawa?
I was at a hotel that was very close to Metcalf and Queen, I believe. So I'm not sure the names. I was at a hotel that weekend.
And when did you begin staying in that hotel?
It would have been on the Thursday night before that weekend. 17th, maybe? Not sure.
Okay, and Mr. Deering, on the 18th, and I'm going to stick with you for a few questions. On the 18th, where was the protest that I understand you participated in? Do you recall where in the downtown it was?
So I was at the memorial that day around 8 in the morning. I had my coffee. I was congregating with a few different vets. And then just, let's say, north or south, my navigation's a little off, but just about 100 feet from the memorial is where the police started to line up. And that's when the call out went, and all the veterans, or there was about 20 or so of us, we lined right up, we linked arms, and the consensus was we were going to stay there and try and protect the Canadian people.
And why did you want to do that?
It was our duty. When I joined the military, I swore on an oath to protect people. I went to a war zone to protect those people, and I never thought that someday I would have to do it on Canadian soil, but I did, and I will again. I would.
Were you told at any time or informed at any time that you couldn't be there or it was unlawful for you to be there?
No.
And I understand that you were arrested on the 18th. Is that correct?
I was.
Can you tell us briefly how you came to be arrested?
Sure. So I remember about 12:45 is when we lined up, we linked arms. 12:25, sorry. And we had a chance before the police decided to make their push. We had about 15 minutes to kind of converse, and I had the chance to speak with 4 or 5 officers. I let them know who I was, why we were there, what we were doing, the fact that we were peaceful. I showed them the photo of my crater of my bomb just to give them some reference so that if they did arrest me, and I mentioned to every policeman I talked to, I said, if you arrest me, keep in mind I have a really bad back, please. Sorry, if you can repeat the question again, sorry.
I'm just asking about how you came to be arrested.
Okay, right. So I had a chance to converse with the police. Multiple police, after I spoke with them, they would move down the lines. They didn't want to really have anything to do with me. Finally, there was one member that came up. He didn't know my situation as much. I did have a chance to refresh his, to give him my reference points, my photo and my story quickly. But about 45 minutes into the pushing, I kind of underestimated the amount of physical toll it would take on my body after 14 years of not being able to do what I could do when I was 20. My muscles and my body was just, I had given up. I was finished. And the video would show that I succumbed and I gave myself to the police. And as the police took me down, again, he knew he kneed me in my side, kicked me in my back. I was laying down. I was in the fetal position on my back. He kicked me in my ankle, my foot. As I was laying down, I had my hands completely up. I'm saying, I'm very peaceful. I'm peaceful. I'm not resisting. I was then punched 4 or 5 times in my head. I had a knee on my back to keep myself down. I was on the ground for 1.5 to 2 minutes. My hands were zip tied. The officers slowly picked me up, and then we slowly proceeded to the processing line. We get to the processing line. The day was -20. I had no gloves on. At the beginning of the processing line, we were standing there, and I had asked, the duration of the processing line was 1.5 to 2 hours. So I was standing there in the cold for 2 hours. I asked the policeman who was on both sides of me, I said, do you mind, you know my conditions, is it okay if I sit or kneel because I'm in chronic pain? It was obvious, my face was flush, and I had cried multiple times, and I don't cry ever. It was the worst pain I had felt since I'd been blown up. The fact that I couldn't sit or stand was to me cruel and unusual punishment. We would go 15, 20 minutes without even moving. I also asked if I could have my medication, in which I had my prescription and my medication on my person so that if I needed it, I could ask. I asked, and I was denied my medication to comfort my duress. We finished the processing line after about 2 hours. Police took my, on the whiteboard, they put down my name, they took my photo. They then placed me in the back of the squad car. They read me what I was being charged with, which was mischief, public mischief, and sorry, I'm forgetting the other one. Public mischief and, sorry, 1 minute.
Take your time.
Public mischief and,
It's okay, Mr. Dring. Your statement is in the record. So if I could
Sorry.
actually move you back in time, what were you and your group doing just before you were arrested? What activity were you taking part in?
So we were linking arms. We were standing, we were not moving, we were not progressing, moving forward. We were telling the cops what they were doing was, it was an unlawful order. We had every right to be there under our Charter of Rights and Freedoms to peacefully protest, which we were doing. They had no right to do what they did.
And at any time, either before you were arrested or after, were you given the option to go to another place in Ottawa to protest?
No.
Okay, Ms. Hope Braun, I think as we said earlier, I understand you were protesting on February 19th in
Yes.
Ottawa. Where was that protest that you participated in?
It was all, I guess at that point, we couldn't really go past Chateau Laurier. So I, for the most part, spent most of the protest up on Wellington, right in front of the Parliament building. I did walk around and see the sites a little bit, but that day, it was from Chateau Laurier to down Wellington. And then I was arrested when they had cleared Wellington, and protesters were then on the side streets. So I was on O'Connor.
And were you told before or any point that day or before or after your arrest that you were not allowed to be where you were?
Not in that effect. No, there was, no. Obviously, we got the sense that we weren't welcome there, but I wasn't directly told that I wasn't allowed to be there, and in that way, that it wasn't lawful for me to be there.
What gave you the sense that you weren't welcome there?
The massive amount of police and their presence was taking over the city, it seemed. So and the news media and Justin Trudeau's words, and, you know, like more that I wasn't welcome there, not that that it was not lawful for me to be there. I believed it was lawful for me to be there, and I didn't hear otherwise.
And either before or after your arrest, were you given the opportunity or were you told about any kind of place you could go in Ottawa to peacefully protest?
No, there was no place provided or planned for us to go. And not only that, but afterwards, people were still coming from across the country, and places like Arnprior. They were assembling there, and the owner of that property was threatened with fines if he didn't have us disperse. So it wasn't even that we weren't welcome in Ottawa, we weren't even welcome to assemble an hour outside of Ottawa. So it extended beyond that red zone, in my opinion, in my experience.
And how did you come to be arrested? Can you tell us about
that? So when police had effectively removed everyone from Wellington Street, they had all the streets with the trucks on them at this point, and I was on O'Connor, and I had a bit of hope that they would stop there because we were remaining peaceful as protesters. We were there from all over the country. And there was a man who had the Charter of Rights, or I guess it was the Bill of Rights. It was a document. They look the same and they both represent human rights. And so I took 3 copies of that, and there was 3 different police units, it seemed. They had different types of uniforms, so they appeared to be, so I spoke to each unit, and I said, you may have been able to justify this up until this point, but if you keep moving forward and you onto the people, because we're just the people now, that you have the trucks, you will be trampling our Charter of Rights with your boots. And I put it down in front of each one of them. And in the middle of the street, I knelt down and in front of the charter, and I told the police officers that that if they move forward, I'm willing to not resist arrest, and I won't move at that point. So that was my line in the sand. So
And just coming back to Mr. Deering, you had mentioned just before your arrest, you had said something about an unlawful order. I just wanted you to clarify what were you referring to? What was the unlawful order?
Can you
Take your
repeat the
time.
question again, sorry?
Sorry?
Can you repeat the question again, sorry?
You had mentioned an unlawful order, and I just wanted you to clarify what you were referring to.
Sorry, I'm just having a bit of a brain fog at the moment.
So I think the context was I had asked you why you were there, and you said that you were there. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I understood it to be in defiance of an unlawful order, or you weren't leaving because of an unlawful order.
From what I understand, a mandate is just that it's a mandate. It's not a law. We didn't vote on it. The people didn't want it. It was pushed upon us, and I felt it was unlawful.
And what is the mandate?
The mandate was the Emergencies Act. Sorry.
And for the panel, can you just tell us what was the impact of these events?
Sorry, sorry, can you say it again? Was that for me?
For the panel, what was the impact of these events
Of the impacts of
on you as a person?
for the past 2 years?
Sorry, on
Or-
the events in Ottawa.
The events in Ottawa. Sorry, I just need a minute.
So for me, the impacts where I was already I've always been concerned about our government overreach, and we have to keep an eye on our government. That's what our duty as people, the citizens of the country are, is to be politically active and involved and aware of what's going on. And over the years, I'm just increasingly starting to lose faith in the institutions, and what we say is we are Canadian. We're a democracy. We attract people from all over the world because this is a place where we have rights and freedoms. And to me, the impact was that it was evident to me in a very clear way, and seen among the entire world, that the Canadian government is not acting on this is my opinion, obviously, not acting according to what we mandated it to. It's not protecting us. It's not upholding its job. It's not doing its job. And to me, it just broke any illusion of that. And at the same time, I think it's important that we see that as Canadians in the world, so that we can fix it, so that we can make it better. And we need to kind of keep that in check. It's the nature of being in a world filled with people. We have to balance it out.
And Mr. Deering, did you want to answer that as well?
Can you repeat the question one last time?
So
Sorry.
I'm wondering what the impact of your experience in Ottawa was and how it ended on you as a person.
It's such a loaded question. I'm sorry. There's so many emotions going on in my head. In the last 2 years, it's just been constant persecution after persecution. And I find that when the government has a role, but when they want to get into your lives and tell you who you can see, when you can see them, and dictate everything about your life, and when they get too intrusive, the overreach for me was just too much. And again, I had to be in Ottawa. It was my duty. I had no choice.
Yes, Ms. Hope Brown.
More personally, the impact for me is, after speaking to a therapist, just, clear signs of PTSD, like symptoms around what happened. And my whole life was really turned upside down from that time forward, and has impacted my life. It's a completely different life now, before and after that day. So.
Okay, and I'd just like to close out with the panel. I'm going to ask both of you. Let's start with Ms. Hope Braun. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to say that we didn't get to talk about?
I don't think so. I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Deering?
If I could, I'd like to speak directly to you, sir. I think I'd like to ask you, and as a veteran, I'm asking you that if this never happens again, you have the power of a whole country behind your opinion. Please use it to protect the Canadian people from this kind of misbehavior from this government towards its people ever again. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay. I think it's the Ottawa Police Service is going to go first.
David Michikowski, I'm counsel for the Ottawa Police. Good afternoon, Mr. Deering. Good afternoon, Ms. Hope Braun. Mr. Deering, you were looking at a statement that you had in front of you, and that's the document that's called Canada Freedom Rights Movement Statement of Chris Deering.
Okay, I don't remember that, sorry.
You have a document in front of
These are just my notes. Sorry, they're so I can reference, because of my traumatic brain injury, I need some things to reference, so.
Sure. I just want to see what those notes are. Is it the same as your statement that you were referring to?
Yes.
Or is that?
It's in there, yes.
Right. And so what it is, it's a document. We can put it up on the screen, but I think you have it in front of you. It's called Canada Freedom Rights Movement Statement of Chris Deering. Is that right?
I'm not sure of that document, sir. I'm going to look, but I don't recall that.
Sure. Have a look at it and tell me what it says, or if you want
Can you
to show
repeat
it
the
to me.
title, please?
Sure. It's called Canada Freedom Rights Movement Statement of Chris Deering. Perhaps we can put it up on the screen so you can.
If you could
see.
put it on the screen, sir. I
Sure,
don't
we'll
have
do
that.
that.
Okay.
I can't recall the number, but I believe.
Council, if it may be assistance, I believe that's HRF 401598.
Thank you. If you could just put that up so that Mr. Deering could see it. Is that what you had in front
Yes,
of you?
I don't have that with me, sir, but I have seen it, yes.
So sorry, did you have something else with you?
Notes to reference, sir.
These are notes that you made when?
Just recently, so I can remember, sorry.
Okay, perhaps those notes can be filed at some point as well. Those are not notes you made at the time of these incidents, right?
No, sir.
Okay, I didn't realize, I thought you had your statement in front of you when you were testifying, but you had some other notes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Hope Brown, I believe your statement also says at the top of it, Canada Freedom Rights Movement Statement, correct?
I don't recall the very top line, sorry.
Perhaps we could call up Ms. Brown's
I'm
statement.
sure it is, if that's what you're looking at.
This is the hearing clerk, just for the benefit of the record, that's HRF 401606.
That's correct.
That's your statement as well, correct?
Yes.
And so those statements say at the top, Canada Freedom Rights Movement statements. Who put that on them?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
If I can answer. that
No,
from my-
no,
We
no,
did.
Commissioner.
Don't worry, that's questioning cross-examination. Go ahead.
You don't know.
I would imagine it would be the lawyers that were taking our statements.
Those would be the convoy organizer lawyer?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. It wasn't any of the people at this table, was it?
I was speaking to them on the phone, so I'm not sure.
Right.
I couldn't see them.
Who gave you the statement?
Pardon?
Who prepared this statement? Typed it
It
up
was-
and gave it to you?
It was, I was contacted through the Justice Center.
Right. And so one of the Justice Center's lawyers prepared this statement and sent it to you, correct?
It was basically word for word of, they asked me questions and I gave a response, and this is exactly what I said to them on the phone. So yes.
And then they gave it to you and they typed on it, Canada Freedom Rights Movement statement of Chris Deering and of Maggie Dingman, the original one said, correct?
Okay. Yeah,
Sure.
I'll agree with that.
Right. And that's the same heading that we see on the statements of Tom Marazzo, Canada Freedom Rights Movement, but you don't know what that means.
I don't know. I'm not somebody who, I understand that words can be titles for things. To me, Canada Freedom Rights Movement are 4 words that represent what I believe I'm part of. So I don't know. Looks
Okay.
like a good heading to me.
See, what I'm trying to figure out is most of the other witnesses here were interviewed by the commission, and then we have statements that are on the Public Order Emergency Commission letterhead.
Okay.
You were not interviewed by the commission's lawyers to prepare those statements, correct?
I was interviewed by a lawyer who was here working with the commission. So I don't know.
These, you don't remember. And how about you, Mr. Deering?
Everything in this is correct. I wrote everything myself.